Welcome to Woodnote Studio. Last time I made some 3D cutting boards. Some worked, some didn't work so well. But it was a great learning experience. Maybe I got that cutting board bug or that charcuterie board bug, whatever it is. I dared to make more. So I was asked to make some charcuterie boards, so I did. And I wanted to share those builds with you as well. This time, instead of going with the hardest process I could think of, I went somewhere in the middle. I didn't go completely easy, but I still wanted to challenge myself and come up with a nice, intricate design. I've seen this done before, but it seemed like it was straightforward enough that I can handle it and really hone in on the technique. So I went with a charcuterie board that's going to look like this. This is a template I made out of plywood. I'm going to show you that process as well. I recorded that. It was a fairly simple, straightforward, creative process, but it worked and it worked well. The three species of wood that I'm going to be using are maple, walnut, and some purple heart that I picked up. Just a strip, but this is going to be what I use in between the maple and the walnut, kind of as an accent piece. But let's get to the build and let's see how well I do. The first thing I do is grab a 1/2-inch piece of plywood and measure out the size and shape of the charcuterie board that I want to make. I like the look of this design, so this is what I drew up using the container of my Rockler cookies. I cut it out from the large piece of the plywood with my jigsaw, and then I get up close to the pencil lines with my bandsaw. Then I finish perfecting the template on the disc sander and spindle sander. Now, as I mentioned in previous videos, this is my journey on growing as a woodworker. But what I also realized is that I'm also growing as a content creator and a video editor. I think my woodworking skills and video editing skills improved since I started this journey. I know I still have lots of room for improvement, so if you'd like to make any suggestions on what you'd like to see me do in the future, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel so you can see that possibly in future videos. Hitting the like button, share button, and leaving a comment all help my channel reach more people. So I thank you for helping me out. And now enough of me yammering on, asking for help, and let's get back to this build. It's very helpful to take your time when you're creating this template, because once this is finished, you can produce a lot more of these charcuterie boards with ease and quickness. Now, you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on all these fancy tools like I did. You can make these templates by using files and hand sanding. It might just take a little bit longer. Okay, now that the template is finished, it's time to mill up my lumber. The nice thing about making these is that I only need to plane the tops and bottoms flat. No need to joint the sides since the gloops are going to be on curved surfaces. If you're confused by that comment, it'll all make sense soon. Once the tops and bottoms of the walnut and maple boards are flat and the same thickness, I can cut them to smaller lengths to make it easier to work with. Since I have a template, I know exactly what size these are going to be, so I make sure to leave an extra few inches on the boards so they don't end up too short. I left the live edge on this piece of walnut by mistake. That gave me some problems when I went to do my glue ups. Don't be lazy, and try and plan ahead. For the purple heart strips, I use a thin rip jig to cut repeated consistent bands to go between the maple and walnut. Since I'm making 2 boards and planning on doing 3 cuts, I'll need 6 strips of purple heart. Hey, look at that, I can do math. Add that to my journey of growth. Time for all of this to start making sense. I take some double-sided tape to attach the walnut and maple pieces together. Wait till you see me struggling to get them apart in a little bit. Then I draw a line of the curve I want to cut on the bandsaw so I have something to loosely reference as I'm making this cut. I used a 1/2-inch bandsaw blade so that the flow would be smooth. I'm not sure that's the result I got, but I went with it and it worked. If you're going to try this, just make sure to push the wood through the blade at a steady rate and go completely through in one direction. Don't try and follow the line exactly, it's only there for reference. If you back off the cut, it won't fit back together after. Look at this. I told you I'd be struggling to get these pieces apart. That double-sided tape actually works really well. That's a good thing because you don't want them coming apart while you're trying to make your cut. I used a spackling knife to just pry them apart without ruining the wood or making any dents in them. It worked well. Whoa, language. Glad the censorship caught that one. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Make a curvy cut on the bandsaw, take the thin strip of purple heart, and put it in between the two different species, because now they'll fit together, and you glue them up. Once the glue is dry, you repeat the process 2 more times, or more if you so desire. I felt 3 was nice and not too chaotic. Also, remember when you're doing your glue up, not to over tighten your clamps because it'll squeeze out the glue and you'll actually weaken that joint. Another helpful suggestion, when making the second and third cuts, be sure to intersect the previous cut so you can get more variance in your board. Now that all the cuts and the glue ups are complete, I take the boards to the planer to make them perfectly flat on both sides. I take very light passes to avoid any tear out. This step would be best if I had a helical cutter head on my planer, but I don't, so this will have to do. A drum sander would work really well also, but I don't have one of those either, so I have to work with what I have. After attaching my fancy template to the board, I cut off the majority of the waste at the bandsaw. This would have been easier if I would have changed the blade to a smaller one, but I didn't feel like it. Then I use a spiral flush cut bit on the router table to match the template. You wouldn't believe how many takes it took me to get that one. I set my router table fence nearby so it would suck up most of the clippings. I found it amusing during editing how much the fence vibrates away from the router bit. I didn't want to lock it down in case I needed more room for the cut. But looking back, I guess I'm lucky it didn't vibrate towards the bit. That could have been disastrous. For the hole that can be used for hanging the board up, I measure the center from the sides and then cross the same distance from the top. Using a setter punch will help ensure the fastener bit line up exactly on that mark. You see how I get the bit lined up right over the mark I made? Well, my journey hasn't advanced enough to make me realize that my arm is in front of the camera shot. Luckily, I narrowly miss blocking the shot on the next attempt. I use a 7/8 inch fastener bit to cut out the hole in the charcuterie board, taking my time to slowly hog out the wood. Too slow can burn it, and too fast can cause an unclean cut.
Thought I didn't go through, but that's just the plywood.
Before I start sanding, I put a very small 1/4 inch round over around both boards. This breaks all of the sharp edges and gives me a reference point for hand sanding to keep that break even. I end up with a bit of burning in some spots, but it's not too bad and will sand out easily later on. You can also see I did some touching up with some purple heart paste to cover up any imperfections. I'll go over exactly what I did with walnut in a moment. I sand the boards with 80 grit to start so I can see any spots I might need to fill in with paste. Now the paste is a simple mixture of the sawdust from the wood you are filling in and the glue you are using. I try to mix to a wet sand-like consistency, but not grainy, otherwise it won't blend well in the cracks. There were some knots that had shallow separations in the walnut and the maple. I made sure to fill those in so no food would get in there. For finishing, I use Mahoney's Finishes. It is a walnut oil that goes on super easy, and then I go one step further with the paste wax. From my understanding, walnut oil is preferred over mineral oil because it does not spoil. I am not sponsored by Mahoney's, I just really like their product, and I like supporting small businesses. I will leave a link to his website in the description below. Now, I wonder if he was a big fan of Police Academy. I really was. They were some funny films. Let me know if you were a fan in the comments. All right, well, these came out amazing. At least I think so. I'm really proud of how well I did on these, and the technique that I used was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. If you want to try this technique as well, my only recommendation can be take your cut slow and make sure when you do your glue ups, everything is nice and tight, and make sure you get a nice even squeeze out when you clamp your pieces together. Don't over tighten and squeeze out all the glue, but this is very achievable, and they come out really nice. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed this process and this journey that I'm on. Please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And join me next time for whatever I'm about to make on the next video.